Welcome to this episode of Q&A with Liturgy Man. I'm Taylor Burton-Edwards, Liturgy Man with Discipleship Ministries of the United Methodist Church. I'm your apportionment dollars at work to help you strengthen worship and the understanding of worship where you are. Today's question is one I've gotten a couple of times in the last couple of weeks from email, from Facebook Messenger, a couple other places, about how do you handle doing either an actual marriage ceremony or a reaffirmation of marriage or a blessing of civil marriage in the course of a regular worship service. Well, the first thing to understand is we actually can do any of those things on a standard Sunday morning without actually changing the rest of the liturgy all that much. The place where this kind of action would come, whether it's the actual creation of a marriage, or it's a recognition of an existing civil marriage, or it's a reaffirmation of marriage vows, is response to the word. So after the sermon, the next thing would be an action of response to the word involving the marriage itself, or the reaffirmation, or the recognition of a civil marriage, any of those three. We have some guidance, rubrics, and models for a recognition and blessing of civil marriage and a reaffirmation of marriage vows in the book of worship beginning on page 133. Both of those place it after the sermon. In both cases, you're looking at a very brief service. It doesn't take up the whole thing. It's very tidy and very compact. It involves typically, for those two things, involves maybe a prayer or simply words of greeting, announcing what's about to happen, and then the exchange of vows, and then an act of blessing. Nothing more complicated than that, right in the middle of the worship service. And then you would have the prayers of the people, move on with the offering, and ideally, a Holy Communion following that, in which the whole congregation celebrates. The rest of the service could be just like a standard Sunday morning. You're following the readings of the lectionary, preaching on those. Obviously, since a wedding or a reaffirmation is happening as part of the response to the word that day, you'd want to address the couple in some way, but it wouldn't really be just about them. Rather, they'd be about everything else that's going on, and it's more of a wedding, if you will, between the congregation and the couple. If you will, thinking about how they are doing this together rather than being solely focused on the couple or solely focused on the congregation. It's a way to engage both. I also want to say, I think this is one of the best ways to do a wedding or any kind of other service, rather than taking a separate time away from the rest of the gathered community, doing it right on Sunday morning, doing it with communion following, and then have a nice party after that, for the whole church and the whole community that's with you to celebrate. So it's not hard to do. For a wedding, in addition to the guidelines we have here, the adaptation you would make is that you would take the declaration of consent that happens early on in that, which is actually required in some jurisdictions to be used. Put that first immediately after the greeting or prayer of blessing for the couple before you do this. Then you would go straight into the vows and then do the prayer of blessing after that. You would not need to do the additional scripture readings or additional special music or any of that, because actually you've already done the readings for the service. You've already had the sermon. And so now it's just the time for those elements that are specific to the act you're doing that day, whether it is an actual wedding or a recognition of a civil marriage or a reaffirmation of a Christian marriage. Hope this has been helpful. Remember, you can always contact me, worship@liturgyfolks.com, through our UMC Worship Facebook group, or drop a line on this page. And perhaps your question or comment may become the basis for a future episode of Q&A with Liturgy Man. May the peace of Christ be always with you.